Inshallah, we'll get started shortly. Just waiting for Sheikh Joe to join. We had planned to start, inshallah, at 9 o'clock. So this is not going to be the entire masterclass. This is just going to be, inshallah, a small introduction to the masterclass, kind of the origin stories, inshallah. And it looks like Sheikh Joe is joining. 1 second.
Hey, so.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Doing well, doing well.
Audio okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear
Yep.
me? Awesome. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm actually excited because I feel like I get to ask you the questions. It'll be a benefit for me, inshallah.
I'll be shooting them right back at you.
Alhamdulillah. No, I think we said we'd start, inshallah, at 9 p.m.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
in, oh, I think it is 9. Let's see. Oh, I still got a few minutes, inshallah. You're at home or overseas?
I'm at home, as you can see my
Oh, yeah, mashallah.
gallery wall behind me.
Yeah, there's already a few questions coming in the chat, but yes, this is not going to be the full Nikah Masterclass necessarily. We're just going to be, inshallah, talking about the origin story of the Nikah Masterclass, how it came about, and my cat is in the background.
Ah, what's your cat's name?
We call him Illu the Billu.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Billy in Urdu is cat, so yeah.
Nice. MashaAllah. I think I see another question here. Is it for married couples too? Yes, it's for everyone, single and married.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, check out the nikahconference.com. So that's inshallah what we have planned coming up next. And if you go into the bio of the Nikah Masterclass IG, you'll see a link to the Nikah Conference. Alhamdulillah, we're going to have a lot of amazing speakers, mashallah. We have Sheikh Joe Bradford will be there. We have Imam Mahad, who is also part of the Nikah Masterclass. We have Sister Malak, who is a financial advisor. So alhamdulillah, many area-specific individuals, inshallah, who will be joining us for this conference. It's all going to be online, inshallah. And I think that if you register soon, I think there should be a discount there. I believe there is a early bird discount going on right now, inshallah.
So, yeah, I think Mahad's going to be talking about communication. Is it his presentation at the conference?
Yes, it's about communication and how to apologize to your spouse.
Yes, the apology handbook or something like that.
Yes.
The apology blueprint.
Yeah, I'm really excited for his topic. Actually, I'm excited for a lot of the topics. By the way, we're talking about the Nikah conference, inshallah, that's scheduled for July 29th. So if you guys haven't registered, there's a link in the chat. And also, if you go to our bio, you can register there, inshallah. But yeah, what we were talking about is Imam Mahad is going to have a wonderful topic about communication and specifically how to apologize to your wife. So that's what Sheikh Joe Bradford was alluding to. And we also have many other topics that weekend. For example, I'm going to be talking about legal protections against abuse. Sheikh Joe, what's your topic?
A negotiated mahar.
Oh, mashallah. We get a lot of questions. We get a lot of those questions.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think you gave a little bit of Freudian slip there. You said, how to apologize to your wife. Well, I think the apologies go both ways. So we want to make sure that we're being fair there. Everybody, we're just kind of bantering right now until we start.
Inshallah, wonderful. And it looks like the time is 9:01. Inshallah, I think we should get started.
Yeah, leave your marks. Go ahead.
Yes, no, just to Sheikh Joe Bradford first and foremost, and to all of you who have joined. So this is we're really excited for this live because we have something really special coming up. Inshallah, we have the 2-day Nikah conference scheduled for July 29th. Alhamdulillah, we have 8 confirmed speakers, and inshallah, we'll be talking about a myriad of topics. And that's really a culmination of 1 year's of work. Alhamdulillah, for those of you who are joining us or have heard about us for the first time, we've been offering courses, weekend-long courses, to help individuals learn about marriage from the Islamic perspective, but also from the legal perspective. And we've had hundreds of students, alhamdulillah, over the last year. And we thought that we need to bring this to the big stage. And so inshallah, we'll be having a fully online conference at the end of the month. And we wanted to take this opportunity, inshallah, to talk a little bit about my experience, Sheikh Joe Bradford's experience as it relates to marriage. Why did we come up with the Nikah Masterclass, and what do we have planned? So inshallah, I'll start with Sheikh Joe Bradford. Perhaps, Sheikh Joe, you could give us a little bit about your experience dealing with married couples, dealing with marriage, and kind of the intersection of, let's say, Islamic law and Western law, and kind of what are we facing in the West?
Yeah, so Bismillah, alhamdulillah, I think one of the things that's daunting is that as a community, we are generally very civically engaged, orderly people. We want to do things by the book, meaning that it would be rare that you would go to get married and someone would say that you're not going to register the marriage. It happens, right? But what happens sometimes is, or many times, is that we kind of subscribe to going by the book and not really understanding what the book says, and that causes a number of different hardships for us, because the values and the assumptions that civil marriage is based on are many times different than Islamic marriage. And so before that, do you hear that beeping sound?
Yes.
Okay, so give me just a moment. It's
Sure.
not my my fire alarm, I promise. I was actually cooking, so.
Oh, mashallah.
Yeah, so before my chicken goes to toast.
There you go. No, honestly, I'm so excited that we have Sheikh Joe with us, and I'm actually taking this as a kind of a selfish opportunity for me to get some time with Sheikh Joe. But as we kind of were discussing that, inshallah, we'll talk about, the problems that Sheikh Joe and myself are seeing. Oh, he's back already, mashallah.
Yeah,
So,
I
yes,
just had to turn it off, that's all.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think one of the problems is that we go in with assumptions about how the marriage is to function, what our rights are, what's due to us. A lot of times we think about those things very selfishly and subconsciously. Sometimes these things are not even enunciated. They're not even spoken. We just go in with, hey, this is how it is, not realizing that we're signing on to certain rights and responsibilities Islamically when we do a nikah. When we do a civic marriage, we are also signing on to certain rights and responsibilities that can clash with those Islamic ideals. And the hard part comes is when people think that the hard part comes when people not only not know that, but they also think that there is a level of kind of diametric opposition between the two. So I've had couples come to me in the past for financial disputes, and one of the spouses will say to the other, well, you need to choose the American way, the Islamic way. And it's an uphill battle to tell them, yeah, the Islamic way might not be what you think it is. It might be, it's not like this dogmatic list of rules. Like, I'm just gonna go, the sheikh, he's gonna pull out a rule number 7, violation, red card, and then you've got to go and see the marital counselor or get a divorce. It doesn't work like that. So some of the difficulties that present themselves is people having very simplistic views about what the law is, and also having very simplistic views about what Islamic law is. And so, I remember speaking with a community leader here in Texas, he was telling me how he many times mediates disputes between couples, especially in his community. And he said, there's this lady who was, just convinced by all of her peers that her husband was defrauding her and disenfranchising her, not giving her anything. Well, why? Because he's a doctor and he has a building and he has revenue of millions of dollars a year. And she, she took him to court and initiated a divorce and all of this. And when it came down to the final settlement, she walked away. She was going to walk away with something like $50,000. And they were like, dumbfounded. The judge had to explain to her that this is because revenue is different than profit, and your husband was literally spending all of his profit on you and your children. That's why your children have never, had any debt when going to college and things like that. So the assumption was, well, I'm just going to go to the courts and they're going to give me all of his stuff and I'm going to take half, right? That's one assumption. Or you have the assumption that, well, it doesn't matter what the courts say, or it doesn't matter what I've agreed to. She gets nothing when we divorce, and the truth is always somewhere in the middle, right? And in very case by case base. So one of the things behind the Nikah Masterclass was, like, how do we offset these issues from happening, from reoccurring? And that's been kind of one of the challenges,
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, and from my perspective, so, for those of you who I'm being introduced to the first time, so I'm a divorce attorney in Chicago, and most of my clients are Muslim clients. And what I've seen, especially when it comes to the Muslim clients, is that the divorces amongst us are actually much worse than, let's say, the normal public, right? We might argue that our divorce rate is lower. However, when it comes to the acrimony and the animosity in divorce cases amongst the Muslim population, it's much, much greater, honestly, because people come the day after they get into a fight, before talking to any counselors, before talking to anybody else, they come to the divorce attorney and they want to get back at each other. And so you'll have external pressures, family pressure, that are pushing them to really go after each other. And I think that animosity, the impact that it has on children, on your finances, the Muslim community, and all that, because there was no real understanding of what really happens in divorce, right? What happens to your children? What happens to your assets, whether that's Islamically or legally, as you were mentioning? And I think the problem really is this lack of knowing what's going to happen, and lack of expectations as well. Like for a husband or a wife to expect that Islam is going to be applied at your divorce when you didn't sign any documents related to it, you entered into a civil agreement. Well, how can you now expect that Islam is going to rule? So I think the purpose of the Nikah Masterclass, and what I really want to get across, and what we want to get across, is, understand the Islamic paradigm, understand the legal paradigm, and just be educated and know what you're getting into, because if, God forbid, that situation comes into your life, you'll be ready to address that, and you'll have this expectation of, okay, I know my assets are going to get divided. Or wait, I got a prenup and I decided that this is how the assets will be divided. So inshallah, that was kind of the goal behind this class. And the conference is really going to dive into more specific issues. And the Nikah Masterclass itself, that's offered 2, 3, 4 times a year, really goes into these legal issues and Islamic issues that Sheikh Joe Bradford had brought up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you've seen a number of different things with being a divorce attorney, that it can be very sad many times, because I do believe that a lot of people have a sincere belief that what they're doing is right, or they want to do what's right, but many times they don't know how, and they're getting very, very poor advice. And that poor advice many times just leads to absolute horror stories. And the goal behind the Nikah Masterclass, actually, let's step back. It's funny because kind of the non-public face of everything, Tamir, right? He reached out to me originally. This was kind of like the heyday of cryptocurrency stuff, right? So he said, and I had tweeted about, like, blockchain and digital custody and stuff like that, and he had seen my work with my wasiyah for Islamic estate planning, and he said, hey, what if we did like an escrow of mahar online through cryptocurrency? And I was intrigued because I had actually been to a number of weddings where the couples actually gave cryptocurrency as a mahar. So I went to one wedding of a close friend. His daughter got married. She was given 1 Bitcoin, and another wedding. I think it was like 4 or 5 Ethereum when Ethereum was at its height. You know, so the idea was, well, you know, is there a way that we can maybe escrow the mahar and allow it to be transferred directly to the bride? Now, that didn't really, what we kind of like, we started to kind of like think about was, okay, well, what if people just don't know what the rules of mahar are? And okay, well, we need to like educate people about mahar. Well, what if they don't even know how to like be compatible with each other? And then it was like, okay, I was like, okay, well, I know, right? He's a graduate from the International Islamic University of Malaysia. He has his license. He's a licensed marriage family therapist. You know, he and his wife work on issues like this. Let's bring them in. And then, you know, Sophia was like, no, you guys leave me out of it. You know, and Mahad came in, and then we started talking about, you know, well, the real crux of the issue is legal issues, right? And then the idea was, okay, well, we need to talk to a divorce attorney, and that's when, you know, I had, you know, Tamara and I had talked and suggested your name, you know, to bring in. And you and I had met prior to that, and I think we had been on a podcast or two together.
Yes, I think that's how we met. Yes.
Yeah, and so that's where it started to move away from creating like a functional. Well, actually, there was a step between the cryptocurrency and the masterclass. It was like the cryptocurrency escrowed mahar, and then it was like, okay, well, what if we did like a smart contract nikah contract, right? Where it would signal to people like the wali or the witnesses or the officiant that certain things, and then the escrow could be released or it could be clawed back or whatever. You know, we're kind of like playing with that, and then that's what led to like, okay, well, let's start thinking about like boilerplate language, and you know what, and then that's when we brought you into the picture. And then it was like, okay, we need to actually like, education is so important. It's the main thing that people need more than anything else. And then that's where the Nikah Masterclass idea came from, is, okay, well, let's drill down on these 3 topics. And so the 3 topics was, or the 3 topics are, Mahad Qamar, he handles compatibility and finding a spouse and those issues. You yourself, a lot of people don't know, Naveed Husain is a licensed divorce attorney in the Chicagoland area, right? And an all-around good guy, right? He has a cat, so that shows that you're a good person. You can't. Anybody can own a dog, okay? Anybody can own a dog, but not many people can own a cat. Do you know why? Because cats don't like you. They don't care. Cats sit around and they wonder, why are all these other creatures in the home not serving me? And so it is a lesson in humility to own a cat, because you're like, oh, the cat, I love it so much, and the cat is like, please, meow, leave me alone, right? So you came in to talk about a marriage and divorce in the American legal paradigm, and then myself about marriage and divorce in the Islamic paradigm. And I want to say something right now, because we mainly get people asking about the worst case scenarios, right? And people are like, you know, like lots of what ifs. I want to remind everyone, it's Nikah Masterclass, not Talaq Masterclass. So the goal is to educate single people, married people, about how to deal just to learn and understand what these things are, you know. You know, I think you do estate planning, correct?
Yes.
So and I'm sure that you've run into this, where many times Muslims in the States will think, well, yeah, I've got a lot of money, And one day I'm planning to go back home, and if I pass away there, in our country, everything's taken care of. Or they have no idea about going back home, but the idea that the government takes care of those things is kind of ported over, because in Muslim majority countries, family law generally is Islamic law.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
I don't think until the last 10 years that any family law systems in the Muslim majority world have even dared to suggest otherwise. I won't go into details about which countries, but there's this assumption that, well, it'll be taken care of, and that leads to a whole other bag of worms being opened up. So the same thing with what creates all of those relationships? It's the marriage, right? It's the divorce, it's the child custody, it's the maintenance during marriage, it's the compatibility that people have, and the idea of educating people is so important, because when you don't know, you don't know, and you can't act, and say, this is my path, I call to it upon clear out insight, right? So Allah wants us to have basira. He wants us to have insight into the things that we do, and not to just make assumptions about, I have a friend who's a marriage counselor in a northern state. I won't say where. So this couple, they're like going at it. And one of them says to the other, I want the house, and I want the car, and I want half of your 401k, and I want this, it's just like this laundry list of things that they want. And he says, okay, so why do you think that you deserve that? And the person goes, Islam, duh.
My money's my money, your money's my money, right?
Yeah, so there are a lot of platitudes that we have to combat in the community, and attitudes that are not helpful, right? They can be very detrimental.
No, the education point is really important, right? Because we looked at 200 of our cases, just a random 200 of our cases, and we noticed that people who immigrated, if one or both of the petitioner or the respondent, they're immigrants, their divorce ends up being $2,000 more expensive overall.
Really?
Yes, yes. And so you can see, again, like you said, you kind of take the law from back home and you believe that it applies here, and you're there for a rude awakening, because that's not what's going to happen. And so those divorces end up being much more expensive. The other point that I was going to mention as it relates to education is, not only do the potential husband and wife or the husband and wife need to understand marriage, but it's also the wali, right? And I think that's a very big missing. Oh, mashallah, you have a cat as well.
Say hi. She's like, no, I didn't come here for that.
Exactly. MashaAllah. The wali, right? The father or the uncle or the brother or whoever else, that role is also being minimized. And I think we take that role for granted. So I believe this education process isn't only for husband and wife, but really for the community, for the imams, for the fathers, brothers, mothers, sisters, everybody kind of involved in this process. As you said, family is kind of the main institution that everything is built off of.
And you touch on a good point, because so as someone who converted in my teens and who does not come from a Muslim majority family, okay, I'm the only Muslim in my family. How will the identity of Muslims be maintained when we look at our most sacred institutions like marriage and divorce and parenthood and childhood and and Jummah and Eid as symbolic rituals that can be disregarded when needed? When these things don't have actual substance, right? Islam is not like Christianity. Islam is a substantive legal system, and and people might say, oh, how can you say, religion is a substantive legal system? Well, Judaism is a substantive legal system. There are rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations were created to preserve the identity of Muslims generationally. And there have been, there have been instances of, Muslims coming to this country kind of, not respecting the institutions of their own faith, simply giving in to predominant culture and being completely lost. I mean, there are several masajid in the United States that were lost and then regained, right? Especially in the Midwest, because it became, well, just go to the courthouse. Well, just, I mean, I remember a friend of mine from Detroit. He was doing some kind of, he was doing like some anthropological work on the history of Muslims in Detroit. And he said that he actually found documentation of one of the older masjids there had written a letter to Al-Azhar asking if they could change Jumu'ah to Sunday.
Subhanallah.
Because it would make it so much easier for everybody to go to the masjid if we could just do it on Sunday. He said, mind you, this is a masjid where they had like the musalla was up top, and in the basement they were doing like flapper dances, like 1920s, like they're like in the basement doing the Charleston, and and then the rest of this is the masjid in the weekdays. So our identity can become lost very quickly if we don't realize that the way that Muslims survived was to take seriously the sha'air, to take seriously the emblems and the institutions of Islam. And yes, we're not talking about syncretism and changing things, but applying them to their contexts, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I think about Islam, what really attracts me is kind of the sociological aspect of Islam, right? I know in undergrad, I did a sociology major, everybody did psychology major. So I always love the macro level of things. And I love to think about, how we have the objectives of the Sharia, right? And preservation of wealth, preservation of health, all these different things. And when you look at these legal systems, in particular, the inheritance legal system and how Islam envisions how distribution is supposed to occur and how that can lead to generational advantages, I also think about marriage in that same way, right? That if we actually practice nikah and talaq or divorce the Islamic way, we would actually be able to protect the institution of marriage much better than using the Western concept of marriage, right? The Western concept of marriage being unity, you become one, the man now owns the woman, and that's really where a lot of these laws are derived from, juxtaposed to the way that Islam deals with property, or the fact that Islamic marriage is based off contract. Just that in of itself, promotes family, promotes marriage and stability in society. So I find that really fascinating about Islam and its institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a very good point. I spoke with a marital counselor here in town, Muslim marital counselor, but does not counsel just specifically Muslims. And she said that with her Muslim clients, they are almost always super concerned about the nikah being done correctly. And when the talaq comes around, everything goes out the door.
That's for sure.
Everything goes out the door. Ta'ala says, and stinginess is brought to the souls, and so but the more just we are in marriage and in divorce, then the better picture. Why do we have, and I've seen this even, in people that I know, why do they have such a cynical and many times cynical attitude or disregard for the institution of marriage? It's because they saw people not only act badly within marriage, but when they were ending their marriage, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divorces twice. then it should be himself to hold them with what is customary and good, or to allow them to go with ihsan, with a sense of excellence, a sense of beauty, right? And indeed, Allah has decreed ihsan for everything. And so when we disregard that, it's not surprising then that we see people who are cynical and have a certain disregard about the institution as a whole. And quite frankly, we're at a very sensitive time, and a time for us to actually be moral exemplars of the goodness of marriage and the goodness of divorce. So we do not believe that as you mentioned, the union theory of marriage, that as it is on earth, so shall it be in heaven. Two souls joined as one. I have a friend who's a Catholic family, and his older sister got a divorce, and she had to wait, I think, 4 or 5 years to get a petition from the Pope that would allow her to get married again. Otherwise, in their faith, it was considered that she would be committing zina if she went and got married to another man, because this heavenly union had to be broken apart by the vicar of Christ himself, the exemplar of Christ himself on the earth, the Pope. So I mentioned that to say that we're at a crisis point, because people are extremely cynical about the institution of marriage and the institution of dedicated relationships.
Oh yes.
All right. So the third wave feminist idea of relationship, right, is that you don't need a man. A man is there to satisfy you or give you, and nothing else matters. And then you have this red pill, masculinity. I don't even know, like some call it men going their own way. There's the red pill thing. There's a couple of different names for it. It's the mirror opposite of it, right? It's the same. It's the other side of the same coin, and that is women don't matter, right? And although a lot of those people will preach and they'll say a man is supposed to, take care of his women, he's supposed to, keep people in line and all of that stuff. In the end of the day, it all comes down to, well, women don't want that, therefore, treat them badly, and therefore, sleep around. And because if a woman's not going to respect herself, why should you? And that becomes the end result of it. And what happens is that the structure of the family as a whole is being disintegrated. And it should not be a surprise to people that as people commodify relationships to the point of, OnlyFans and porn sites and, going on dates just to be able to be bought dinner and all of that kind of stuff, that everything focuses on the fulfillment of selfish desires, and everything that focuses on the fulfillment of selfish desires by nature denigrates into immorality and social chaos.
And I think the way that we're finding our spouses right now really reflects that, right? When you have these applications where swipe right, swipe left, you don't know their values, and you're basically using the commodity, right? The commodity of that person's looks or their salary or their title. Yeah. And that's how we're going to now decide on who your spouse is. That's obviously that's a reflection of what people are actually looking for in marriage. And I actually think that that's one of the problems as well, is we don't have the village setting, okay, for good or for worse, depending on who you are. But we don't have the ability now to find a righteous spouse because we can't see their values. We don't see them in their environment. People don't want to get married in college anymore. I actually encourage people to get married in MSA because you can actually see their values and who they are, who they hang out with. And so, yes, the commodification of marriage has impacted us from when you're starting to look for a spouse, during your spouse, and now, unfortunately, at the time of divorce as well.
and even throughout the marriage. I mean, I know of people who are married for convenience, but in all ways, shapes, and forms, they are they're not happy, and they're together simply because it's cheaper, and it's and that said, because I did say this is Nikah Masterclass, not Talaq Masterclass. There are many people who have very vibrant, loving, caring, and meaningful relationships with their spouses for very long times. And that's what I meant when I said that, you know, it's time for us to be moral exemplars of what it means to be good in marriage and good in divorce. It's unnecessary for, you know, to have these knockdown, drag out, battles in divorce. And it's unnecessary, you know, it's also unnecessary for us to be delaying nikah because of the anxieties that society places on us about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be in a relationship. And learning our values and understanding what those values are is a very, I don't want to say tricky thing, but it can be challenging. I'm going to ask you this, Naveed. If somebody asked you what your values are, how would you respond? How would you know what your values are?
I mean, I think, you know, first I would probably approach it from the Islamic perspective. And I know we talk about this in the Nikah Masterclass as well. We say, oh, you know, we want somebody religious, somebody who prays 5 times a day, wears hijab, respect of elders, understands the value of money, understands gender roles. So I think these are kind of the values that I would espouse when looking for a spouse. But I think I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but kind of where everybody falls into the line of, I want somebody religious, somebody who prays 5 times a day and is a hafiz of Quran.
Yeah,
that's what I looked for when I was 20 years old.
That's mashallah. You're looking for a hafiz of Quran? Allahu Akbar.
I mean, it kind of happened that way. My wife's not hafiza, but you know, she's memorized enough.
Oh, you had to call her out like that. Astaghfirullah. You know, a woman or a man who only knows Qisar surah, the shortest surahs, and understands them and practices them can be more valuable than a person that's memorized the whole Quran and doesn't practice it. May Allah forgive us all. So there's an entrepreneur that I follow on Twitter, and he lives here in Texas. He said something that I thought was a great shorthand for understanding what your values are. He said, to understand what your values are, think about how people insult you and what would be offensive to you and what would not. So for example, if somebody said, you're stupid, would that be offensive? He said, for me, it would be offensive. If somebody said I'm stupid, it would be offensive because I'm a person who is inquisitive and I love to learn and I like education and I'm always trying to do new things. But if somebody said to me, you're silly, I would say, yeah, probably, like, yeah. So the value is the opposite of what you would get offended for. So now, are you stupid? No, I'm not stupid. I'm intelligent. I value intelligence, right? You know, if somebody came to you and they said, you know, you're a fasik, you know, you're disobedient, you immediately feel offense at that. You'd say, no, I'm not. I try to be as obedient to Allah as I can. I value obedience. Now the kicker comes to the next point, and that is, if I want characteristics in a spouse, are those characteristics in me? Or we can even word it differently. Would I marry me if I met the female version of myself? If that's a hard question to answer. Like if everything that I embody as, you know, as a mindset, as attitude, as values, as practice, as, you know, motivation. If I found that mirror image in a female, would I marry her? And, you know, that's a hard question if we're honest with ourselves, right?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
I mean, I could make
Especially if they
a
look
lot of
great.
I can make a lot of I can make a lot of quips here, but I won't. But I think it's an important question for us to ask ourselves, right? And one of the things that the Nikah Masterclass does is we go through those, you know, what are those values? How do you discover them? How do you communicate about those values? I'll never forget that the one the very first time that I realized the importance of clear communication was when I so I was I approached someone about marriage, and you know I reached out to them on a whim, and um and she said to me very very politely, but 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 very quickly and very clearly, thank you for your consideration, but I'm looking for something else. I wish you the best.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm so impressed and crushed at the same time. Like
Oh man.
this is a weird feeling to, you know, to feel like uplifted by someone's character and crushed that they don't want you. So you know, understanding, you know, what it is, and then I understood from that I value clear communication, right?
Mm.
And I think that you know, somebody had asked earlier in the chat, like, what's one of the major reasons why we see a lot of divorces? And I'm sure that you know, both of us will have differing perspectives on this. I see it as a lack of communication and a lot of unspoken expectations that are rooted in either, you know, selfishness or ignorance or anything else. So literally for some people, the wedding is the highlight of their marriage, when in reality the highlight of their marriage should be, you know, sitting on a porch in rocking chairs 50 years from now, right? I don't know. What do you think about the main reasons for divorce, and then what would those look like to someone now who's looking to get married? How would they avoid those by, you know, by doing the opposite?
Sure. Yeah. Usually I identify kind of the top reasons as, you know, I think communication is, yes, definitely kind of one of the overarching themes, but more breaking it down a little bit more, in-laws is a big problem within the Muslim community, right? The interference of third parties getting into your business, whether you're living with them, not living with them. So I would say in-laws is a huge one. I would say finances, right? And again, that
I've
goes to
seen that.
communication.
Yes.
Yes. Finances, whether you make enough, you don't save enough, you spend too much, and not having the proper communication as it relates to saving goals and that type of thing. So finances is up there. I think third is kind of a broader category of addictions, be that
Really?
pornography addictions, be that stepping out on your marriage, gambling, alcohol, drugs, that type of addiction type problems, I would say.
I'm gonna throw another addiction in there.
Yeah.
Social media addiction.
Yeah, subhanAllah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And because your spouse will never be able to give you the attention that thousands of people on Instagram give you. And the moment you open yourself up to that, you're addicted to it.
Allahu Akbar. No, I mean, it's funny because we're on Instagram, but
Yes.
the way that Instagram, I think, affects, for example, you can say that pornography or YouTube are, you know, more visual related when it comes to men seeking is their problem when it comes to, let's say, pornography or YouTube or some type of other visual impact. But when it comes to women, a lot of times I've heard that Instagram is usually the worst app for them because of, you know, the attention that one can get. So you're right. Social media, whether it's Instagram or some other method, is absolutely a big thing that I've seen. And actually, there's a case recently where a lawyer was found to have done malpractice because he didn't look at the social media of the other spouse, right? So in a divorce case, they didn't look at the husband's social media, and obviously there was a lot going on when it comes to not only custody, but also their habits and that type of thing. But so just like your social media can be used against you in divorce court, it can definitely be used against you on the day of judgment as well, subhanAllah.
Yeah, subhanallah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So there's a few people in the comments I saw that scrolled that asked, what's the difference between the conference that's coming up and the masterclass? What would you say?
So I would say that the Nikah Masterclass is kind of our staple event in the sense that that's really where you're going to get the breakdown of the communication and compatibility aspect with Imam Mahad. You're going to get the Islamic side of marriage and divorce with Sheikh Joe Bradford, and you're going to get the legal breakdown of marriage and divorce with myself. So that's kind of our staple class that we offer 3 to 4 times a year. But the Nikah conference is our first dive into expanding on some of the interesting topics that come out of the Nikah Masterclass, right? For example, negotiating mahar, or legal protections against abuse, or how to talk about finances with your spouse, the problem that women face in a Western society as it relates to Islamic law. So a lot of the things that we wish we could dive into in the Nikah Masterclass is kind of what we are now addressing in the Nikah conference. So it's definitely different content, different speakers, different format. So if you have taken the Nikah Masterclass, I would absolutely encourage you to sign up for the Nikah conference as well, because we're going to have some amazing, amazing speakers, inshallah.
Yeah, so while there is some overlap, it's kind of like, the cohorts, we created a foundation. How many cohorts have we had so far?
I believe 4.
Yeah, 4 or 5, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, I've got extra questions about these topics. So, like myself, I'll be talking about negotiating mahar, right? Yourself, you'll be talking about legal protections against abuse. Very important topic. Imam Khalis Rashad will be talking about Islamic sexual ethics. That's a very touchy topic for a lot of people. A lot of people don't even want to. I mean, they act as if you get married and you never have sex. I remember one of my friends. He was telling me he said one of his best friends got married, and that friend comes from a culture that is very village based, like not in a metaphorical sense, but like in a real sense. And so he said that what they do is when they have a wedding, like all of the families come, right? They stay with the bride and the groom, and they're just there for like the first 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Just like everybody's camping out, like, and you're in a 1 or 2 bedroom home, maybe mud walls and ceiling fans and a wall unit air conditioner and maybe 1 bathroom. And he said, and essentially, like, the women are sleeping at one end of the house and the men are sleeping at another, and everybody's just there to enjoy the wedding. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, when everybody's leaving, the bride is getting sick, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And one of the aunties says, says in front of everybody, "She's pregnant," and everybody was
God,
like, "How?"
I feel like that's what happens in Desi households too, man. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. These people were not Desi, but yeah, everyone's like, "How? Like, when could that have happened?" Right? So there's many times an attitude that stigmatizes sex. It stigmatizes sex by men. So when men are sexually desirous of their wives, they are sometimes looked at by their wives as being perverted. Because we live in a society where the objectification of the female body has gotten to the point that men want to turn themselves into women. And so when the man who it is halal for him to objectify you objectifies you, you have this knee-jerk reaction because society tells you should be having people from outside of the household interested. So it's a reality that we have to come to grips with. And then on the other side is you know, the idea that like women aren't sexual creatures, meaning that, you know, women don't want a good looking spouse. They don't care about, you know, how their spouse looks or how he acts or how loving or how romantic he is or how he performs, right? And so a lot of women feel themselves in marriages where it's taboo to even suggest, like they're married, they're obviously doing it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but it's taboo to even suggest because, oh, how could a woman say this? It's quite ridiculous, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, you had was it either Haram who came to the Prophet and said, hey, O Messenger of Allah, what if a woman sees in her dreams like a man sees, and and some moisture comes out? What does she do? Right? So Aisha used to say, may Allah have mercy on the women of the Ansar. Shyness would not stop them from learning their religion. Back to this, you know, back to the topic of education. So Imam Khalis is going to be talking about Islamic sexual ethics, and he's a good friend of mine. He's a person I have a lot of trust in to be able to teach that topic, and I think he's very insightful as well, being that he's been working as an imam and a marriage counselor, and he's a trained CPA as well. He's been doing this for, say, you know, 20, 25 years. So he has a lot of insight, and I'm looking to benefit from him. Imam Yusuf Wahab is going to be talking about the barriers women face annulling a marriage in non-Muslim countries. And Yusuf Wahab is a graduate of Al-Azhar University, and he has an LLM from, I believe, Windsor or Wayne State. Don't quote me on that. And he's published a couple of articles on these topics. And so he has a lot of insight about kind of what the current practice is and what he's actually done, I think, a survey of these issues in Canada and how they were approached by different Islamic centers. So a lot of practical advice there. And then Mahad's going to be talking about, it says here, relationship frameworks for newlyweds. But I remember that slide that said something about the apology blueprint.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I thought that too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's the final topic that he set on, is of those relationship frameworks, like learning how to get off your high horse and say sorry is probably one of the most important. We also have Malak Kudemi, who will be talking about, I believe, I think women's finances in marriage, and then Saad Malik from Zoya Finance will be talking about investments. And I don't remember if Sheikh Mikhail Smith is joining us or not, but
yeah, I believe he had a conflict. I I actually saw him join the live feed earlier, but I think he might have left.
Saw that too, yeah.
Yeah. I think he was scheduled, but I think there might be a conflict. So let's make dua, inshallah.
Oh, mashallah. Someone was saying that he was our sheikh in Windsor back in the day. That's nice, mashallah. Yeah, so for this conference, it's kind of, we're going to be talking about, you know, various, you know, these not high level, but more specialized topics. And then you know, obviously there's a running wait list for the master class. And if some of you have taken the master class in the past, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. You know, for those of you for those that have not taken it and are joining us now, what did you think, and would you encourage them to take it or not? I think, you know, because the idea here is you know, preparing Muslims for marriage. Like, this is, if you walk away from this live session tonight with one thing, it's cats are better than dogs, and Nikah Masterclass prepares you for marriage.
Do you know when the class is again? So we have a question about the class. So the Nikah conference is at the end of this month, July 29th. You can register at nikahconference.com. I did share a link in the comment section. It might be up top now. But also, if you go to the Nikah Masterclass IG page, that's the first link, or the only link that we have in our bio, and you could register there as well. That's going to be a 2-day 2-day full days of, I believe, 8 to 10 sessions, inshallah. And one of the
Yeah.
sessions will be Sheikh Joe, myself, and Imam Yusuf Wahab, and we'll have an open panel talking about divorce, Islamic law, kind of the intersection between Western law and Islamic law. And I think that I'm really excited for that particular session as well, inshallah.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we don't do is matchmaking.
So I have a solution for that. So,
Okay.
So Imam Mahad and myself, actually, we're in a non-for-profit that I volunteer for called Oasis, which is kind of a community space in Chicago. We actually teamed up with Imam Mahad and Suhba Institute to do a matrimonial event July 15th in Chicago. So that's, yeah, Oasis Chicago,
I saw the
oasis.shy.
ads for that. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, I cut
So I'm actually,
you off. Do the pitch. Sorry.
no problem. I was just saying that, if you visit oasis.shy, we do have a matrimonial event July 15th in Chicago. And also, if you check out Suhba Institute, mashallah, alhamdulillah, they do a lot of matchmaking events. And as we were alluding to earlier on, it's a big problem. And alhamdulillah, these institutions are stepping up to kind of fill that void.
Yeah, mashallah. I think the Suhba thing is kind of on the road this summer, right? So Alejandro, who's one of my students here in Houston, him and his wife Gabriela, they've been traveling around, kind of taking it on the road, and well, he's a Chicago native, I believe.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, she's from Houston. But yeah, mashallah. Personally, I'm more into matcha making at this time than matchmaking, but
I'm gonna have to try it out.
Yeah, so that's good. So everyone can check that out. Oasis.chi, correct?
Correct.
If you're in the Chicagoland area. If you're not, then check out the Suhba Instagram, because they've been posting the other, because I know that there's going to be one in like Seattle, and a few other places around the country. So yeah.
Yeah, they went to Michigan. They've been to Milwaukee, Chicago. So like you said, they're definitely traveling around this summer, alhamdulillah. And if your particular state wants a matchmaking, event with Suhba Institute, I'm sure you can reach out and they'd be more than happy to, help your community facilitate something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody is asking, can I join remotely? I used to be from Lombard, and now I'm in San Francisco. If you mean the matchmaking, I don't believe you can join remotely. That's just being on Instagram. And if you mean the masterclass and the Nikah conference, it's all online.
And so Sheikh Joe, as we wrap up, I know it's almost 10 o'clock. We've been on for almost an hour. So what are the future plans? And maybe we can start discussing the future plans and what can come out of the Nikah Masterclass and the Nikah conference. Like, what do we got in the pipeline?
What can come out of it? Man, you stumped me on that one.
So I know we've been talking about contract templates, right? We've talked about maybe a prenup service. We've talked about going to MSAs and giving presentations to help college kids get ready for marriage. So I guess, and if the audience has any suggestions as well as where we can take this, but I guess kind of our inner discussions, right? Our inner discussions, our weekly meetings, and the future plans, maybe to give a little sneak peek to the audience.
So two things stick out in my mind that I know that have. So there are three things. One is the nikah template, right? And the prenup template that you are already doing, right? Disclaimer though, everybody, you can't do a prenup yourself. You have to have a lawyer do a prenup for you. So people are like, can you guys just give me the prenup template and I'll do it? No, because a lawyer has to do the prenup for you. But the prenup worked with a good nikah template would be good, right? So that's one of the things that I know that you've been working on that much more than I have. I think Tamer and I had worked on that in the beginning, and then mashallah, you and your expertise have picked up most of that. And two other things that I think are really important that really need to happen more. And that is doing the Nikah Masterclass in communities.
Yes.
Like in communities, and specifically for youth leaders, khatibs, Islamic school teachers, anyone who has a leadership and teaching position in the community, or maybe are older and are entrusted to be the walis of women in communities, because the classical Islamic training is one thing. The application of that and knowing when things don't work that way is another. I'll give you an example. There was a case here in Houston where a woman was insistent on taking a khula, insistent, or insistent on her husband giving her a divorce, regardless of whether it was talaq or khula. And I asked the sheikh, and the sheikh said that I can do it. And the husband said, I don't care what the sheikh said. We are not divorced until I will divorce you Islamically, but we will not be that divorce will not be finalized until we have the civic divorce. Now, why was he so insistent? He was so insistent because we've had instances of men Islamically divorcing the women, right? But not legally, and then abusing that situation. And we've had instances of women demanding Islamic divorces, but not legal ones, and abusing that situation. And I won't go into the details there. But it makes it ripe for abuse when you know the classical what's allowed, but you don't know what the best practice is in the situation. So one is educating, especially leaders, future leaders, about how to systematize these things in communities. And then number two is with MSAs and people that are, like you said, that are interested in getting married, right? And I want to address a common retort to people getting married, because you mentioned that you encourage people getting married, right? People say, you get married and then just, like 25 years later, you get a divorce. Like, what's the big deal? Like, why should we even bother if we're just going to get a divorce? First of all, divorce is haram, and it's not disliked to Allah, right? And those ahadith about abghad al-halaq, that the most despicable of halal, if they're authentic, they were about a specific situation of men and women marrying and divorcing and playing around with the sacrament of marriage.
Subhanallah.
Secondly, so those ahadith are about that. And then secondly is, if you get married and you're married for 25 years, you have just been in a long-term relationship for the normative period of life for most people in the pre-modern world. People go, well, people a long time ago didn't get divorced. Yeah, they also didn't live to 90. They also died in their 20s through war and famine and childbirth and a number of other things, right? So, modern problems bring modern solutions. And sometimes that solution can be divorce. Not saying that I vouch for it, but I'm saying that it's allowed. So we have to grow beyond the very immature attitudes that we have towards marriage, towards divorce, towards responsibility in marriage and divorce. And I think that doing these classes with MSAs will kind of prime the pump and hopefully create some, use that fertile land to hopefully grow some, grow change in the community.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. No, that's so amazing and so beautifully stated, mashallah, that we have our definition of nikah, and that's what we want to teach the community, teach our young people, teach the leaders, so that inshallah we're not defining marriage from the non-Muslim Western perspective of what marriage means, but we have our own definition that can actually lead to stronger families and stronger marriages and stronger societies. Alhamdulillah, I'm really excited for this conference. I'm really excited for inshallah the word to get out, right? And we haven't really done too much marketing, alhamdulillah. I think most of it is just information. We're just giving out Q&As and people are finding us. And alhamdulillah, we have, many people already registered for the conference. And I think we already have a wait list for our next masterclass, which could be found on our website, inshallah.
Next one is in October, I believe.
Yeah. Yes, we're slated for October, inshallah.
I believe, yeah, it's in October. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, let's look at the comments before we go. Perhaps people have some more questions. We can, entertain about 5 more minutes of questions if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, otherwise, if you guys have no questions, then we will. So, WOM is the best form of marketing. Leave your mark. I don't know what WOM is.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Okay. All right. I was gonna say. I didn't. Word of mouth. Okay. Word of mouth. Yes. Please, everyone, tell word of mouth. What's the code for the code, please, for early bird? Is there a code for the early bird?
Let me see. I know I had I placed it a link.
Oh, here
we go.
Yeah, leave your mark. You and confuse me. I'm like, WOM. Is that like short for women? Is it like women on marriage? Is it like, working on marriage? Is it like working on who knows, right? Okay, so Naveed put the link there again for everybody. Yes, Malak Kudemi has a specific code and a link for a discount as well. Yeah, anybody, any questions that you guys have about the events or about topics, or also things that you would like to see us cover in the future?
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love to hear. And also, anytime you can message us on the Instagram. And again, Sheikh Joe and myself are here in front of you, but actually most of the work is done by our man, mashallah, Tamer, who actually runs the Nikah Masterclass. We're just the face of it, but mashallah, he's doing all the back end work. He's the one posting all of the Q&As, keeping track of the IG, keeping track of registration, asking questions. So he's always on it, mashallah. So if you have any questions, or your MSA or your masjid wants to invite us over, you can always message us on Instagram. Alhamdulillah.
He's the hardest working man in nikah business.
Seriously.
So let me see if the Nikah Masterclass, because some people are saying they clicked it and it didn't show up for them. So I believe the link, you'll find the link in the you'll find the link in our profile, Instagram profile, the Nikah Masterclass. So Nikah Masterclass is the account. So someone said, as suggested by, can you do prep for teens as well, as suggested by someone earlier? That's an interesting idea. I think that might be helpful, actually, to not go into, say, the nitty gritty, but just to sort of lay the framework for, why do we get married in the end of the day, right? What's so special about marriage when you have society satisfying themselves in every macro and micro way outside of marriage? Why is marriage important? I think maybe a thing for teens, or even like a general community talk on like the maqasid, the objectives of marriage and family in Islam, like a theology of family, right? Theology of marriage would be really interesting.
And that's a good point for the teenagers, right? Imam Mahad mentions this in our class, but you have years and years of education, 12 years to get a diploma, and how many years to get a license and to become a doctor. But marriage being the most important thing, there's no education. And I think that early on education is really building men, building women. I know, mashallah, one of your friends in Texas, I remember you telling us, started a halaqah for young men, futua, and like getting them to have those types of qualities. So I think in those circumstances, in those environments, bringing up marriage early on with teenagers, and even if there's women programs like that as well, bringing up the importance of marriage instead of training our young people to be career oriented, maybe we can start the education early to become, inshallah, family oriented.
You know, that's something that several people, both men and women, have told me, that they felt that they were so conditioned for educational and professional success that they were never socialized properly, and they don't know how
Mm.
to act around the opposite gender. Like they how is it that a young man or young woman can go and join a company and deal with his coworkers and communicate, but when they go home they're still like a child in their 20s and 30s because their parents treated them like children and never socialized them to actually kind of have a coming of age and be considered an adult. And that's a very like codependency with Muslim parents is a huge issue.
Oh, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's a defense mechanism that many times is rooted in a fear of losing one's children, because if you come from, say, an immigrant family or from a family of limited means, you feel that maybe that's all you have is your family and your children. And so while it's we can understand it as a phenomenon, we cannot continue to promote it as a norm. So yeah, I like that. I like that idea about talking to um, younger people, and maybe going over that, how to be socialized for better interactions. So I want to ask, what would you recommend we prepare for the conference? What would you say, Naveed?
I mean, the more prepared you are, obviously, the more you can benefit from any program, whether that's a school or a conference. So, I mean, there's a few books that you can look into. Mashallah, I know Mutarrahman Mangera has the Handbook of a Healthy Muslim Marriage. I know that's a really good book.
It
The
is, yep.
Seven Principles of a Happy Marriage by John Gottman. So there's a lot of books. I believe that a lot of the Q&As that we have on our Instagram page, that might be something good to review. I mean, there's so many talks, mashallah, but again, there's no prerequisites. If you come to the Nikah conference without any knowledge whatsoever, inshallah, we will help build that for you. But again, the more prepared you are, the more you can take advantage of a particular setting, inshallah.
I would say one of the prerequisites is come with an open mind, willing to learn, and not with preconceived notions you're trying to confirm.
Mm.
Most of the difficulties in marriages and divorces and singles trying to find, spouses, whatever it is, a lot of it's built on unspoken expectations and assumptions about what should be. And what we want to do is we're going to say, here's what could be and can be, right? And that, and just take it all in, educate yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm never going to find anybody, or I'm never going to, this is never going to work, or I heard something else, right? Just come and learn. Just be open to learn, like you would be if you went to your local college or university or anything else, and come with an open mind and an open heart and a pad and a pen, and you should be okay. Somebody's asking if I can share the link on my Facebook. Yeah, I can do that, inshallah ta'ala. Somebody's asking, how does it compare to Dr. Hateen's Fiqh of Family series? I have never watched it. Can you cover post-divorce adjustment and co-parenting from an Islamic perspective? That is actually one of the topics that one of our guest speakers was going to talk about. One of our guests for the conference. This was early on, but she was unable to. But we should maybe even do something independently about that, because that's a huge issue.
No, that'd be great.
Maybe a support group for people who have had horrible marriage experiences and need a positive, functional Islamic perspective on marriage. That's definitely something that we can suggest. I think support groups are better and more functional when they're local.
100%, yeah.
I think you guys have like a local program there, right?
We're starting one. We're starting one through the law firm and inshallah through Oasis, the family center I was talking about. So inshallah, we will be having divorce support groups and grief support groups at that particular institution, inshallah.
Great. Inshallah ta'ala. So he said, Assalamu alaikum, my dearest beloved brother in Islam. Nice to meet you, brothers. I'm gonna return the salam as the salam is an amana. And yes, I think that's it. Where does the romance stay after all the logistics of marriage? There's a great book that I really like called Getting the Love You Want. I think it's a really good book for understanding kind of where the responsibility of love and romance and care for each other falls. A lot of times we look to the other person to fulfill us and to be what we expected in the marriage, and we're not being that even for we're not fulfilling what we're supposed to fulfill. And if you're not happy, then nobody else is going to be able to make you happy. So Getting the Love You Want is a really good book that kind of goes over those things, and it's very empirically based as well.
And if you're not following us, make sure that you're following us at the Nikah Masterclass on Instagram, and you can look at our website. You can register for the Nikah Conference at nikahconference.com, NIKAHCONFERENCE, nikahconference.com. That's where you can get the tickets, inshallah. And to stay updated, again, please follow us, share our profile if you benefited, inshallah. Please let your friends and family know about this, really important endeavor, inshallah, that we're trying to create and distribute, inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khairan, everybody, for attending. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless each and every one of you. Naveed, may Allah bless you for being on here, and for all of the hard work that you're putting into educating the community, and just appreciate you. So
the pleasure is all mine. Actually, I took this as a selfish way for me to get some time with you, alhamdulillah. So may Allah accept and allow me to follow in your footsteps, inshallah.
I mean, barakallahu feekum. I think I need to take a quick trip up to Chicago, and
yes,
we can have some of the only biryani to really exist, Hyderabadi biryani, and
there you go.
Does that exist on Gerrard Street? That's what I want to know. It's Gerrard Street, right? Devon Street. Gerrard Street's in Toronto. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Devon Street. Garib Nawaz is what I'm thinking of.
I got you better than Garib Nawaz.
Okay. All right. Inshallah. Sounds good, man. Jazakallah khair, and talk to you guys later. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.